literally, so got them unwrapped, and all I can say, guys, is wow. Totally did not expect this kind of work. So not only are they W25 casting heads, they came off of a 2018 STI dual AVCS. I pretty much wanted to keep the same exact specs as my car now, since you know, we're not pushing a power limit that would warrant deleting AVCS. So for my power level, it's something we could probably take advantage of. And I also didn't want to go with anything less, like an older year, just so that I didn't have to do extra work as far as wiring or sensors or whatever else have you. Yes, the cams are cheaper, but for being a first-time engine builder, I basically want to keep it as easy as possible for myself. So what these are is, these are BC272 cams, stage 2, dual AVCS. They're not very aggressive on the lift side of things, but I also didn't want to, you know, go all buck nasty and everything that's in here, it's all BC Brian Crowder. So we got 272 cams, we got springs and titanium retainers, just single springs, not dual springs. I think BC rates them to about 8,500 RPMs, which will make me happy taking it out to 8,000. You know, I don't know if we need much more than that. I guess we'll have to see. But I also did have them do a stage 1 port, which is basically a pocket port. So they ported right below the valve seat, right where the valve seats to it. Here, let me see if I can show you. So here's the valves. These are also BC valves, intake and exhaust. They're stainless steel. So right below the valve here, that's where they ported it, and then just basically did like a casting cleanup. You can see that they went all the way through the intakes and everything. Let's see if I can get you a better picture. I'll have to find some light, but you can see it's all shiny and everything in there. They did that on both the intake and exhaust side. So these things should flow pretty well. And then the last thing I had them do was install bronze GSC valve guides. From what I understand, steel that comes in them originally is pretty good as far as strength goes, but with steel they get hot and they have been known to breaking. When they break, they get sucked in to your intake, and we know what metal chunks in your intake does, right? So bronze, from what I understand, they are self-lubricating, as well as they get rid of heat a lot easier. So I had them do that. That's the only GSC part on here. And every time you have heads built, or at least cams put in, you should really consider doing new buckets. I almost didn't, thinking that, oh, hey, they're off just like a 2018 STI. But as I come to learn more about cams and about flat tappet engines like boxers, the bucket is actually supposed to move around in a circle, kind of back and forth with the cam, and the cam during break-in, utilizing zinc, wears a pattern into it, and that's how the cam gets broken in. So if you reuse buckets, hey, you might not have a problem. But if you're running high RPMs, high horsepower, you know, those things they're not gonna mesh together quite well. I'll show you the old ones though. Okay, here we got a box of parts. Thank you guys. Thank you, Jeremy, for giving me my cam card back. I took pictures of it, but thanks. What we have in this box is the old buckets. So, I mean, you can look at them. They don't have too much wear or nothing, but they're the shim under style. You can see they have a number on them. There you go, 504. That's in millimeters, and that's how you basically get the clearance for these things. But I don't know if you can see it, but you see there's like a color difference in the metal. It's like light, dark, and then light. Dark's in the middle. As well as, you see the circles on here? That is not only from the bucket going like this in the actual casting itself, but those circles on there are the cam basically propelling it. You know, it's pressed down and turned and pressed and turned and pressed every time the cam lobe touches. So that's why I went ahead and did that. Plus it gives me a little bit of a reserve if you know, I build something that's not high horsepower, like this short block that my camera's sitting on right now. So Outfront got me all my old parts back, which, thank you, that's sick, because all those parts are still totally usable, just in a OEM kind of world, you know, 400, 450 horsepower. So, got all new valves, intake and exhaust, those are also BC, and got all my OEM springs and retainers back, so that's super awesome. You can see the retainers there. And what I was talking about, these are the stainless steel guides. So these actually have to be like pressed out and pressed back in. There's ways to do it yourself, but you risk cracking one of these aluminum heads or casting heads, and if you do that, well, you know what happens next, right? I mean, you're out however much money. And luckily I got a really good deal on these, so I didn't want to do anything that might jeopardize it, just because I had to drive 5 hours one way to pick these up. Thank you to the guy who helped me out and got me these. These are a godsend. But for the most part, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and get these all taken apart. Take the cams out, all these journal caps and everything, and we're gonna clean the decking surface, and we're gonna throw a head gasket on, and we're gonna get them all bolted down and torqued up. Well, first actually I'm going to go ahead and put a bunch of assembly lube on all the cam journals and cam lobes and buckets just to protect us from first start issues. So this engine assembly lube was actually recommended as some of the best stuff. It's used for flat tappet engines primarily, so it's designed specifically for this older style cam setup that Subaru uses. So I have pretty good faith in this stuff. It was not really that, I guess it's a pound tub for about $24. So you can get it off Amazon, or I got it off of jags.com. So we'll go ahead and get these all taken apart, and I'll get back with you guys.
Alright guys, so unfortunately I was kind of done with this, and I totally had background music on, but this whole build here is probably like a 600 wheel horsepower build. It's still a closed deck, but we are putting on heads with ARP 625 plus rod bolts, or not rod bolts, head bolts. And right there you can see we're using a JE Pro CO .039 multi-layer steel head gasket, and right now we're putting it on. It only goes on one way, just line up the water jackets, make sure the oil passage hole goes through, and should be all good to go. I did put some supplied ARP torque lube on the actual head studs themselves, only on the top side that goes to the head, not in the block. Put those dry. So right now I'm pointing at the fact that they need to go over these dowel pins right here. I'm just showing where they line up and correct orientation. So right here I'm got an Allen key to go ahead and sink these studs all the way down into the block. Basically they just need to be hand tight. Like I said, again, no lube, no nothing down in the block side, just dry. So we'll go ahead and sink them down after I decide how I want the motor to be configured. And yeah, again, hand tight, very important. These studs actually have what's called a dog seat on them, and they're shaped in the actual thread of the hole in the block there. So they sit perfectly, maximum thread engagement, and from there, essentially, you shouldn't have to do anything else. They go in super easy, and that's kind of it. Alright, so a little voiceover again. Basically, at this point, I now have everything all lubed, ready for the head to actually go on. I'm comfortable at this point for the most part. Keep in mind, this is the first Subaru motor I've ever assembled. And so, probably a little bit overcautious, but when I put the head on here, I do have assembly lube on the head studs there, and it's kind of hard to sink them down and not get any lube anywhere, especially like in the head holes. And I look, and what do you know? There's some Emily lube that is actually fallen down through the hole and kind of onto the head gasket. And so I see this, and being my first time, definitely the perfectionist I am is like, okay, maybe that's not right. So we end up pulling it back off, and I decide that I'm gonna clean it. Probably a good call, but we bust out the brake cleaner, and I go ahead and go back and clean the actual head surface again. So when you're actually assembling a motor, it's extremely important that everything is clean. Not only that all the surfaces are super clean, but the holes that the head studs go into are chased and clean. Uh, I mean, cleanliness is your best friend in longevity. So when I see this lube, I can't imagine that's a good thing. So we pull it off, clean the head, and I look over everything again, especially the head gasket, and since it never really got compressed, I go ahead and toss it back on here. And this time I end up feeling a whole lot more comfortable. Very cautious still, like very, very cautious. I highly suggest if any of you guys are doing this for the first time, just do it. Just be cautious. Same way. I mean, you get comfortable over time, but being a first motor, nothing wrong with being too clean or too cautious. So this time it just fell right on, and I wiggle a little bit, check what I can. Everything seems to be good. So we push it on, and now it's time to torque them down.
Alright guys, so I've gotten everything basically, or I've got this one head basically all, I got the washers in and the studs, so I put lube on both sides of the washer and then the bottom side of the nut. And I did drop one down here and it almost fell all the way into the short block. Guys, be careful. Like, seriously, take your time and be patient. What I did is I used a screwdriver and stuck the washer over the screwdriver and then held it in the hole inside the head so it didn't go anywhere but that. So, worked pretty well. You know, these are things you learn from doing, and since this is my first time, it's been a learning curve, to say the least. So, we've got our 9/16 12 point and we're gonna just go ahead and torque these in three different torque specs: 35, 70, and 100. Sadly, this torque wrench only goes up to 80 foot-pounds, so I'm gonna have to go borrow one or buy one to finish off the 100 foot-pounds. But we're gonna go ahead and get them torqued from there. There is a torque sequence. I'll go ahead and show you that real quick. So the torque sequence is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And this is per the Subaru manual. And everyone I know pretty much does it that way. So we are gonna do it that way too. So you can feel these bolts stretch a little bit. Yep, like that, right off the bat. So we're gonna go and do the sequence again, just to double check and make sure. You always want to double, triple check. Two, three, four, five, and six. So now we'll get this one up to 70 foot-pounds, and we'll go ahead and get the other side put on.
Okay, so we got the first sequence down, which is 35 foot-pounds, and per ARP, like the actual card they send supplied with the box, will tell you the torque specs. For the 625 plus custom age, that's 35, 70, and then finishing 100 foot-pounds. So we get everything all torqued, and now we're ready to lube up all the buckets and the cam journals and get the journals in. Now they're in, and we're basically ready for the cam caps and the cam bridge, and torque all that down, and the head is done.
Alright, I've already got the other side all assembled, so I'm gonna go over exactly what I do on this side.
Alright, so I apologize for all the voiceovers. I definitely did not intend this, but being one of the first videos that I ever really filmed, and being in the garage all day, it's kind of hard to be in silence. You know, YouTube kind of sucks for the whole copyright laws and whatnot. So I had background music on whenever I could, and not really thinking about it, I just filmed over. So unfortunately, we end up with a voiceover. But basically, I decided to fast forward through everything here, getting this other side all assembled. I felt way more comfortable this time, and cleaned everything, put assembly lube inside the cylinder walls, applied the torque lube to the head studs supplied by ARP, got the head gasket on, and dropped the head on. Again, way more comfortable, went on real quick. Ended up putting the torque lube on the washers and the bottom side of the nuts, got them all synced down, and then ran through our 3-stage of torque sequence: 35, 75, or 35, 70, and then 100. And of course, I forgot orientation, being a first-time engine builder, so looked it up, and got everything all torqued down. Ended up throwing a bunch of assembly lube on the buckets, all the cam journals, and ended up lubing up the actual cams themselves to be dropped in. Of course, each cam is labeled, right side, left side, intake and exhaust. So make sure you look on the cam. It should say like REX for right exhaust, or RIN for right intake, and should be pretty straightforward. So get all those on, get the cam caps put on, get the cam bridge put on, and then end up torquing all the cam bolts. And from that point, we are done.
Alright, welcome back, guys. So today I'm putting on the valve covers. I've already put the bridge on and I've already torqued it down. But first thing I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna show you guys kind of something I learned that most people have doing it themselves will question this at one point or another. Did I take the cam caps off, and is everything in the order that it needs to be in spec with the way it's machined? Luckily, with these W25 casting heads, dual ABCS, it's almost bulletproof. They make it this way so you could take it off, you could mix everything up, and still be able to know exactly the way it's machined. So first off, I'm going to show you. Each one of these cam caps has a number. This one says 3I875. This one says 3E875. Now, the bridge itself also says 875. It doesn't say anything up there, but this all correlates to this number right here on the casting. So all this is basically saying is this is cylinder 3, which if you look at the motor, this right here, this is cylinder 3. This would be the passenger side rear cylinder, so that's 3. Yeah, so 1, 1, 3, and then on the other side it's going to be 2, 4. So this is pretty much saying 3, cylinder 3, and then intake I, and exhaust E. So you got the exhaust flange here, and you got the intake flange there. Now this bridge only goes on one way, so as long as you find the number that correlates to the actual casting itself, there you go. Very, very easy. So gone are the days where it's super important to make sure exactly how you took it off. But we're gonna go ahead and get you guys set back up here, and we're gonna get the valve cover on. So I went ahead and I cleaned up the valve cover with some degreaser, and then I sprayed it with brake cleaner, especially in this one hole right here. I'm pretty sure this is a venting hole. Actually, no, this is not. This is a vent. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna lay the gasket in here. If I can get it on the right way. I'm gonna lay the gasket in here, and then I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna put some RTV down on top of it and spread it out, nice thin layer, and we're gonna get it put on the head. I'm gonna do this because since these motors, these heads sit on their side, you know, oil just pools up in the bottom. So giving yourself a little bit of extra to prevent leaking is really good. From my understanding, these heads tend to leak right where the metal, the bridge meets the metal of the casting. So I'm going to go ahead and get all this cleaned up with some brake cleaner real quick, and then I'm going to get some RTV put down and spread it out with my finger. The spark plug holes don't need it, from my understanding. They do a pretty good job at sealing themselves. So you know, there's probably haters out there that are gonna be like, oh my gosh, dude, you make it you make it harder than it needs to be. Well, maybe, but you know, it's my first time, so I'm definitely not trying to rush anything. So I bought all these. I've pretty much bought all these parts, bolts, everything, to be able to assemble it as much as possible so that it can just be a direct replacement when it comes time to pull an engine. I'm gonna try and swap as minimal things over from my motor now to this motor. So I've done a lot of time on, or spent a lot of time looking at parts and parts numbers and several trips to Subaru. So these have all came in already. These are all the bolts I need for it. So we're gonna get them out of the packaging. Each one is individually packaged, so this might take a minute. Okay, all these are going to get torqued down to about 7 foot-pounds. Okay guys, we're going to button up the last few things here, and one of which is this Killer Bee oil pickup and baffle, and I'm pretty sure we've already got it all tightened up. I cleaned the surface around for the RTV on both the pan and the block, so go ahead and get a bead of RTV on there and call it good. And there we have it. So we'll go ahead and drop this baby on. Get the 14 bolts. I'm pretty sure they're M6 by 1. So what I like to do with RTV is kind of get it on there and get a little bit of the bead to flatten out, and then come back in after about 15 minutes, or drop the Allen and then torque them all down. Okay, we'll let that sit for a little bit. So I want to show you guys a couple things. One of which being, when I bought these heads used off of a 2018 STI, and they were a full set. I mean, cams, everything, even got cam gears. And so when I sent them out, because I sent them out to be ported, if you guys can see that very well, had them sent out to be ported, and bronze guides installed, as well as valves, new springs, I mean everything. And Outfront, the guys who built my short block, they did the work on my heads, but they said that there was some damage on the exhaust flange on the one head. So it looks like they actually pulled these studs and machined this, basically decked this surface where it's all shiny and everything now, and you can see there's some imperfections still left, which they've taken enough material off to make it not that bad, but you can definitely see all the scratch marks and everything over there. There you can see them again. That's super cool that they were able to do that. And at the same time, they basically ensured that I would have a great setup. So it's really nice to work with companies that care about the work they're doing, not just take your money and, you know, shove it out the door kind of deal. So thank you, Jeremy and John. You guys have been an absolute godsend on this, and I am so happy to now have a full long block with all quality parts to pretty much try and see if we can push the limits. So that's gonna pretty much conclude today, guys. I'm gonna post a couple pictures of the finished product, but that's pretty much it. We've got basically in a fully assembled long block. So now we wait on the turbo kit, and I will create a new video once that comes in. So we'll catch up with you guys later. If you guys want to see more content, don't forget to like this video if you like it. I mean, you can thumbs down on it too, I guess that works. But make sure you subscribe, because there's going to be a whole lot more to come. So we'll catch you guys on the flip side. Peace.
Okay, so I thought about ending it with that outro that I filmed there, but I actually wanted to add this last little clip. So I have now timed it, and we're turning it over to make sure that everything is all good. And after we got all the cam gears lined up, you want to turn it over twice. And if the cam gear marks all line back up after 2 full rotations, then you did good. Well, we did good, because this motor ran and it's still healthy today. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and thanks for watching.